The crew for this lifeboat is 7, and we have 14 members who are there to choose from. So there's only one permanent member of the crew here, and that's the coxswain mechanic, Frank Smith. All the rest are volunteers, and they all have other jobs.
It's a great reward to be able to take somebody ashore and realise you've saved their life.
Gives you a very nice feeling when you've been out and done something and saved somebody. As you can't describe it, really.
What's your own attitude to the sea? Do you think it's dangerous?
Oh yeah, the sea has got to be respected. You can never beat the sea. You try to equal it, but you'll never beat it.
Despite all the dangers and sometimes feeling seasick, there's nothing that quite compares with this sense of freedom.
Perhaps the sailors who set out to discover new worlds felt the same desire to escape from everyday life on land. The black cab, one of the most common sights on the streets of London, and a much-loved form of transport. About 300,000 people take a cab every day.
The problem is finding one for hire.
London cabs haven't always been so popular. When the first motorised cabs appeared in 1903, they were slow, noisy and smoky. Londoners were often scared to ride in them. Over the years, various companies attempted to refine the design. The London cab as we know it today was first launched in 1959 and has remained virtually unchanged ever since.
At last. Taxi! Buckingham Palace, please. Thank you.
The height of the cab's interior is a spacious 1.29 metres, and the distance between the facing seats must be at least 43.18 centimetres. This was originally to ensure that if a lady and gentleman sat opposite each other, their knees would not meet.
Here we are, madam, Buckingham Palace.
Oh, I'm not stopping here. What really makes London cabs so special are the drivers, or cabbies as they're often known.
So what is it like being a cab driver?
Very difficult. It's quite a responsibility, taking people around, having them in your charge.
In London, it's great fun, it really is.
The best thing about being a cab driver is if you don't want to get up in the morning and go to work, you don't.
So what are the good parts of the job?
The good parts of the job, you can go home when you want, you can get out of bed when you want and go to work when you want. There's no boss telling you when to go to work, when not to go to work, and that's the great part about the job.
It's very, very flexible.
And the bad part?
When you don't go to work, you don't get paid, and the traffic.
Going to work, that's the bad part about it.
How many hours do you work a day?
Between 10 and 12, approximately.
About 10 to 12 hours a day.
How many journeys do you make on average day?
About 30, I would say.
An average cab driver, if he's working in the centre of London, does 25 trips a day.
About 25 to 30 a day, usually.
So how many miles do you travel a day?
I would say I do 150 to 200 every day.
About 120 to 130 miles a day.
And how far do you drive?
Anywhere that people want to go.
So you go to Scotland?
Go to Scotland if you can pay.
How many cab drivers are there in London?
About 21,000.
And how many of them are female?
Now a couple of hundred.
Can you tell me what the cabs are like to drive?
They're very good now. Up until about 5 years ago, they didn't have power steering or power brakes, which made it very difficult.
So are the cabs easy to drive?
Yes, they are. They're beautiful. Power steering, electric windows, power brakes, have a CD player, everything I could possibly want.
Ask a cab driver to take you anywhere in London and he or she will almost certainly know exactly where to go. That's because all cab drivers have to go through a very tough and thorough training called the knowledge.
People who want to be cab drivers have to learn the name of every street in central London. There is no grid system, like there is in New York, for example, to make the task easier. London has a medieval street pattern. There are 16,000 streets in an area of 113 square miles, and they have to know exactly where each one is. They also have to memorize routes, or runs as they are called. Getting on a moped and driving around is the only way to do this. But that's not all. They also have to know where to find every restaurant, hotel, theatre, cinema, department store, and public building on every street. No wonder it's called the knowledge.
To learn the streets, you go out on a moped because it's the only way to learn. If you went in a car, you would cause an accident because you have to keep stopping to have a look at the buildings. You have to learn nearly all the streets in central London and a lot of the buildings there. For example, all the airlines, all the embassies, all the hotels, and when you're examined, you're not asked the main hotels, you're asked the very small ones.
The learner cabbies are tested on a regular basis. They have to pass one stage of the knowledge before they can move on to the next. The tests are difficult and the failure rate is high. Only 3 in 10 learner cab drivers will go on to become London cabbies.
So how long did it take you to learn the knowledge?
It took me 18 months to do the knowledge.
It could take anything from 2 years to 5 years. It took me 22 months.
Is it difficult to learn?
Very. And at this time of the year when it's cold, you get extremely cold on the bike. You can spend 5 or 6 hours out on your small motorbike learning all these things, writing all these things down.
So you've got to be prepared to give up a lot of time, a lot of social time, and work extremely hard almost every evening.
If the learner cab driver passes the final exam, he is awarded his license. He also receives what is known as a Bible, not the religious kind, but a rule book. It deals with an essential part of the job, passengers.
Are most passengers polite?
Yes, the majority of them are.
95% of the people are very polite.
85% of the passengers are polite, yes.
Who are the best passengers?
The best passengers are the poorest people, actually, who can't even afford a car and yet use a taxi. And they're very generous and very sweet and kind.
Polite ladies.
Just people in general that are happy. They're always good to you.
So who are the worst passengers?
The worst passengers are people who give you the wrong address and then moan when you can't find where they want to go.
Have you had any famous people in your cab?
I have, yes, quite a few. It's difficult to remember all of them, but Joan Collins very recently, Robin Williams,
Dustin Hoffman,
Duchess of Kent,
Sean Connery,
Clint Eastwood,
Muhammad Ali, Charlton Heston,
Annie Lennox,
Tom Cruise, Nicole Kidman.
And still on the subject of passengers, has anything funny ever happened to you?
Yes, once in the city, a Japanese man flagged me down and said he wanted to go to what I thought was Ascot, but it was Earl's Court. Luckily, I questioned him because Ascot is a long way out of London and a very expensive journey, and we found out it was Earl's Court.
Thanks very much. Number 9 there. Yeah, but Horseway Road, please. That's first call. Yeah, Papa Sierra, 05.
To provide an even better service, many cabbies belong to radio-controlled taxi services like this one. Here at Computer Cab, they handle 1 call a second, 24 hours a day, 365 days a year. All their cabs are fitted with transmitters that are tracked by satellite. When a call comes through, the controller looks at the screen to find out the exact location of each cab and can then send out the cab nearest to the caller. The technology may be much more sophisticated than in the early days of the London cab, but one thing never changes. Wherever you want to go in London, you can be sure a cabbie will always know how to take you there. Can you take me home, please?
Well, of course, madam.
The public school is one of the great British institutions. This is one of the best known, Rugby School in Warwickshire, in the heart of the English Midlands. Rugby School was founded in 1567 and aims to provide its pupils with the highest standard of education.
We call them independent schools now because they're not public at all, they're actually private. But it's a fee-paying school and one which provides a whole range of facilities for boys and girls.
What age do the pupils start here?
Here it's at 11, but only 2 small classes for day pupils at 11 and 12. The main entry is at 13.
And where do they come from?
From all over Britain, and certainly quite a few from abroad. About 11% come from overseas. Nowadays, parents have changed their views about boarding school. They actually like to come and visit their children and to watch them playing games and to hear them playing music and so on. So quite a lot of the parents live with within about an hour and a half of the school in the Midlands area of England. But still, quite a few come from Scotland, thank goodness, and from the north of England, from the West Country, and so on. So it is still a national school and not just a local one.
And what is special about Rugby School?
One of the interesting things, there are quite a lot of special things, I think, is the mixture, the juxtaposition of what is old and what is new. If you walk around Rugby School and look at the buildings, you do get the sense of families having been here. It's an old school, it's been on the go for hundreds of years, so there is a feeling of tradition, but at the same time, it's a very innovative school and tries to do lots of new things.
The facilities are exceptional, and the tradition gives the whole school a sense of community and a real atmosphere.
I like the way that you live with people in your year for 5 years and you get to be really good friends with them, and then after you finished here, maybe go to university with them.
So how many days a week do you have school?
6 days. We have a full day on Monday, we have half day on Tuesday, full day Wednesday, half day Thursday, full day Friday, and then half a day on Saturday, but that's about it.
The days are very long and you have lessons 6 days a week, which is hard work, but in general, I really enjoy it.
My dormitory's through here. We have 8 people sleeping here. This is my bed here, and my wardrobe. There. Got some drawers here to keep my clothes in. Things like that. Shoes can go in here. And about 10, we've got to be up here by about 9:45, and at 10, a senior boy comes up and turns off the lights. He sleeps over there. He comes up at about 11 o'clock. In fact, he just joins in with the fun. It's a really great atmosphere in the dorm. is the language lab, where we can record some of our own conversations, watch videos in different language. We can use computers to type in other languages, write essays, watch TV from different countries. You can learn a whole variety of languages: Russian, German, Latin. Basically any language that you'd like to learn, you can learn it here.
The school gave its name to this, rugby football. The game was invented here. During a game of football in 1823, a pupil called William Webb Ellis ran with the ball instead of kicking it. Such initiative is encouraged in pupils today.
William Webb Ellis in 1823 took the ball in his arms, and in those days you weren't allowed to do that. I suspect his friends didn't like him very much for that and thought that he'd spoilt things, and it took really quite a large number of years before that was incorporated into the game. But I also think it says quite a lot about the rugby boy and now the rugby girl, that you need a little bit of rebellion in you, and every so often it's good to have someone who actually does things differently.
For over 400 years, rugby was a school only for boys. In 1976, rugby opened its doors to girls, but only in the sixth form. 1993 saw a big change, with girls joining throughout the school. Now, 210 of the school's 710 pupils are girls.
Although there are fewer girls than boys, there aren't any major difficulties. I think the one problem is sport. Because rugby was invented here, the boys are very proud of their sports, and girls' sport tends to be pushed into the background. But apart from that, we're treated equally.
What do you think are the benefits of being at rugby?
Well, there are very good facilities here. Every aspect of the academic life is catered for. There's a new library's just been opened. We've got a sports centre, gym, a drama studio, music facilities. So there's never any time to be bored. There's always something you can go off and do. And also in a boarding school, the friendships you make are very close as well. So I think that's enjoyable too.
So you have a special role in the school. Can you explain what that is?
Well, I'm head of Dean House, which is one of the girls' houses, and that means that on an administration level I have to help with the running of the house. I have to work with my housemaster and mistress to give certain people certain jobs they have to do in the house. But I also have to get to know the girls quite well, so I can help them with small problems they might have and tell the housemaster and mistress how everyone is getting on in the school. I usually get up about 7:30. We have breakfast at 8, and then on Tuesdays, Thursdays, Fridays and Saturdays we have to go to chapel at 8:30, so I have to gather everyone up and usher them into the chapel where we have a short service before the lessons.
Do you feel that you get enough free
time? Yes, I think that a good thing about being at this school is you can decide how much you do. They do have the facilities, but you don't have to use them. So you can decide what you do and how much free time you have.
I think if we were given more free time, we'd find out that we were pretty bored if we were given too much. So I think we do have enough free time, yes.
Does the school only aim for academic excellence?
Not at all. That's at the centre of what one does, and I think for a member of the teaching staff, the most important thing is to get the teaching right, and everything else stems from that. But being a boarding school, we're trying to do a huge number of other things. And ironically, the universities now tend to look more at the academic side of things, but the next stage, employment, thank goodness, goes back to the other qualities of all-round excellence, of being able to do several things, of being able to see things through and plan things through to the end, leadership, teamwork, all that kind of thing. These are very important qualities, and employers, thank goodness, start to look at that. Universities are not so interested, but we care a lot about all the other things that happen outside the classroom.
surprising range of activities outside of the classroom, from rock bands and scuba diving
to making television programs in the school's media centre. Many old rugbyans, as the school's former pupils are known, have gone on to fame and fortune. Lewis Carroll, the author of Alice in Wonderland, was at Rugby. Other famous pupils include the poet Rupert Brooke and Neville Chamberlain, who was the British Prime Minister at the beginning of the Second World War. So what do you hope to do after you leave rugby?
After I leave rugby? I think I've decided on the media. I know what I'm going to do for A-levels. I think I'll do English, French and Spanish, and maybe study English at university.
What do you hope to do when you leave rugby? Well, I hope to go to university. I've been offered a place at university to study archaeology and anthropology. So I have to get certain grades, and if I get 3 A's, I'll be able to go to Cambridge next year to study that.
Oh, good luck.
Thank you.
What do you hope that each pupil will take with them from rugby?
Something different. I'd hate them all to be the same. And I would hope that each one is able to develop his or her particular interest or excellence. I'd want them, first of all, to be able to work hard. The habit here is academic work. When they go on to be bankers, vets, farmers, whatever it might be, they must work hard at that particular discipline. I would like them to have a sense of fun, and I believe that school ought to be fun. If they're here for 5 years and haven't enjoyed those 5 years, there's something wrong. And I would like them also to have just a tiny sense, I say tiny because obviously one wouldn't survive if it was too great, a tiny sense of rebellion. I don't think they ought to take things for granted, and they ought to be able to say, well, why are we doing things this way? Isn't there a better way of doing it? And can't we make the world a better place somehow?